If you could only see what I'm using as a tripod right now. If you could only see the way. Anyways. Wow. Hi guys, my name is Jess. This is Jess About Books. I'm a fantasy, sometimes sci-fi, sometimes thriller, sometimes lit fic reader. And today I'm going to be doing my October TBR. Scary. The first book on my TBR for this month is Bunny by Mona Awad. This book is about a girl, maybe in her 20s. She's at a really small, exclusive, master's program for writing. And in her, cohort of her class are a group of girls called the Bunnies. And the Bunnies are this kind of, culty, mean girl, ragtag group of, not ragtag, I just mean they all have their own personalities, clique. And the book is basically about the main character, Samantha, and all of her, angstiness and edginess colliding with this group of bunnies. And it's called Bunny because they all call each other bunnies. So this group is called the Bunnies. This clique is the Bunnies. So that book is, it's supposed to be a little bit of a horror. It's supposed to be a little bit weird and strange. I'm not sure what to call it as far as genre goes, but this book really intrigues me because it's like Mean Girls meets dark academia. So that's definitely on my TBR because it feels like the perfect vibes for me for October because it's a little bit uncomfortable, but also I think there's a bit of humor in it, and I think that'd be perfect for this month. The second book that I was putting on my TBR, and I would love if I could get to it, but I have a lot of big books on my TBR, is Christine by Stephen King. I actually have a copy. Hold on. I should have prepared better. So I picked this up at a thrift store, and I love the cover of this book, and I love the movie. I love the movie Christine. So I've owned it for a couple years. I love the movie. It seems like an appropriate time to pick it up and to read it. The only other Stephen King I've read is Carrie, and I can't say I hated it, but I wasn't a huge fan of that book, mostly for the writing style. So this one is a little daunting, but I'm putting it on my October TBR. Manifest reading it this month. Finally want to get that unread book off my shelves. I'm going to keep it, obviously, because it's a beautiful book, but I would like to be able to say that it's read. The third book that is on my October TBR is Middle Game by Shannon McGuire. So Middle Game synopsis intrigues me, but what really sold me is Katie Coulson loved it, as well as Kayla from Books of Lala. So I don't know too much about the book. I'll just read you the synopsis. I'm sure everyone's already heard of this. I'm sure everyone's already heard of Middle Game. But meet Roger, skilled with words, languages come easily to him. He instinctively understands how the world works through the power of story. Meet Dodger, his twin. Numbers are her world, her obsession, her everything. All she understands, she does so through the power of math. Roger and Dodger aren't exactly human, but they don't realize it. They aren't exactly gods either. Not entirely. Not yet. Meet Reed, skilled with the alchemical arts like his progenitor before him. Reed created Dodger and her brother. He's not their father, not quite, but he has a plan. To raise the twins to the highest power, to ascend with them and claim their authority as his own. Godhood is attainable. Pray it isn't attained. So, I had seen this book everywhere. Don't know why it didn't pique my interest. I can't say I even looked into it, and I don't know why I didn't even look into it. But Katie Coulson was reading it, and the way she was talking about it, I was like, okay, duh, you have to read this. Books with Lala was live with her doing sprints. She's like a known huge Middle Game fan. Then I finally read the synopsis and I was like, what have I been doing? So that's also on my October TBR, only for the cover. I don't think anything in this synopsis gives me Halloween vibes, but the cover. The cover is the hand with like the candle flames on the fingertips. My next book, you're gonna see that a lot of my books came from Katie Colson's videos, sprints, recommendations. It's True Crime Story by Joseph Knox. And while I find the synopsis for you, Katie Colson, talking about this on Sprints, said that she was reading this fictional book called True Crime Story as if it was a real true crime story, or like she was listening to the audiobook and it felt like a real true crime podcast. And I was immediately sold, like immediately. In the early hours of Saturday the 17th of December in 2011, Zoe Nolan, a 19-year-old Manchester University student, walked out of a party taking place in the shared accommodation where she had been living for 3 months. She was never seen again. 7 years after her disappearance, struggling writer Evelyn Mitchell finds herself drawn into the mystery. Through interviews with Zoe's closest friends and family, she begins piecing together what really happened in 2011. But where some versions of events overlap, aligning perfectly with one another, others stand in stark contrast, giving rise to troubling inconsistencies. Shaken by revelations of Zoe's secret life and stalked by a figure from the shadows, Evelyn turns to crime writer Joseph Knox to help make sense of a case where everyone has something to hide. So, this, I believe, is fiction. Yeah, I believe it's fiction, but it's one of those meta books where the author, Joseph Knox, is also a character in the book, I think. That's what I've gathered from what other people have said about it. But, yeah. It sounds really good. It sounds like that nonfiction about the woman who did her own sleuthing and started to piece together who the Golden State Killer was. I can't remember what that book is called. But it sounds like internet sleuthing. It sounds like true crime podcasts, even some like true crime YouTubers, Reddit. Like it's giving me all of my favorite things in one story. So I definitely need to get that read this month. I have it checked out on Libby. It's just waiting for me. So I will be reading that on my Kindle. A lot of these I'm going to be reading on my Kindle. The next book that I have on my October TBR is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slang Vampires. That will be the first Grady Hendrix book that I read. And in the chat of some reading sprints, someone told me it was a really good first book to start with. So this one is about a small suburban community. They don't lock their doors. The children play outside until the street lights come on. It's very safe. Everybody knows everyone. It's full of housewives. This community is suddenly infiltrated by a vampire. And it deals with, it's very suspenseful. It deals with going outside of just being a housewife, a Southern housewife at that, especially. I've heard it deals with gaslighting and like not believing people when things happen outside of your like realm of possibility when you live in this little bubble. And I've also heard that Grady Hendrix has humor in his books. So I'm not a huge horror reader, so I'm hoping that this is my stepping stone into horror this month. I would love to read like actual horror. I don't know what my favorite subgenre is. I don't even know where to start with the subgenres. I couldn't even list them for you, but I'm hoping humor horror is a subgenre and that I'll like it. I'm so sorry for the finger guns. That was embarrassing. This month, I also want to read A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. As soon as I heard about this book, I immediately went to Libby to see if my library had it, and they do. So this is about one of Dracula's wives, I think his first wife, and it's about how she kills him. And I don't think that's a spoiler. I think it says it in the first chapter, first page. And you kind of learn at the very beginning that she's killed him, and then the rest of the story is how they got to that point. So it's also written like a letter to him or a letter to herself reflecting on her life. And it has themes of... So the reason I wanted to pick this one up is because another YouTuber, I will like put her in the description box next to A Dowry of Blood, because I have to look up her username, but the way she was talking about it, it was like a lot of the things that Dracula's wife, the main character, talks about is relatable to like domestic violence. And so it was kind of like the author's prose seemed to be like really elegant and beautiful and articulate about complicated feelings about abuse and domestic violence and relationships. And it's written in this, because you find out the ending at the beginning, it's written in this like reflective, not omniscient, but when you know the ending, your hindsight is 20/20. So it's almost written in like hindsight, like wisdom and clarity, and it's just like really succinct and beautiful. It sounds like her prose truly makes the whole story. So I kind of in myself want to appreciate better prose rather than just like the pacing of a book or the characters of a book. So I think this one would be really good to pick up for me personally. And because I think it'll help expand me as a reader. I think it'll help me grow as a reader to not depend on fast-paced plot or fast-paced like events to get me through a book, if that makes sense. This month, I would also really love to pick up Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is about a murder that takes place at a like upperclassmen high school, but it's a private school. It's very exclusive. It's like 50 students per class period, and they have dormitories, and it's almost like a Montessori type school where the juniors and the seniors that attend get to choose their own path and get to learn what they want to learn at their own pace. And the children that get accepted are usually extremely gifted or extremely interesting. And our main character, Stevie, is a girl who is extremely observant and whose idol is Sherlock Holmes. So that level, think like Sherlock Holmes, and if you haven't read Sherlock Holmes, think like Monk. Ellingham Academy is a famous private school in Vermont for the brightest thinkers, inventors, and artists. It was founded by Albert Ellingham, an early 20th century tycoon who wanted to make a wonderful place full of riddles, twisting pathways, and gardens, a place he said where learning is a game. Shortly after the school opened, his wife and daughter were kidnapped. The only real clue was a mocking riddle listing methods of murder signed with the frightening pseudonym Truly Devious. It became one of the great unsolved crimes of American history. True crime aficionado Stevie Bell is set to begin her first year at Ellingham Academy, and she has an ambitious plan. She will solve this cold case. That is, she will solve the case when she gets a grip on her demanding new school life and her housemates, the inventor, the novelist, the actor, the artist, and the jokester. But something strange is happening. Truly Devious makes a surprise return, and death revisits Ellingham Academy. The past has crawled out of its grave. Someone has gotten away with murder. The two interwoven mysteries of this first book in the series dovetail brilliantly, and Stevie Bell will continue her relentless quest for the murderers in the following books. That's definitely on my TBR. I would love to start that series. This is kind of outside of my usual reading genre. I don't usually read like true crime-esque books, so we're seeing an October theme, so it's not true crime, but it's like mystery, true crime aficionado main character, and like the return of a villain type of vibe, which is not usually my jam. Usually my jam is fantasy, but I still have a couple of those on my TBR. I think like the very last day of September, I picked up A Clash of Kings, which is the second book in A Song of Ice and Fire, which is the Game of Thrones series. I finished A Game of Thrones last month, And I would like to average at least one of these books of the series every month until I finish it, until I get to A Dance with Dragons and finish A Dance with Dragons. Previously, I have read this, so this would be a reread. Same with The Game of Thrones. I've read all the way up until halfway through the third book, which is A Storm of Swords. So I've read halfway through the third book, and then I stopped. I would like to marathon this series. I would definitely like to marathon this series until I finally get it done. So this is, I think, gonna just be going on in the background of all my shorter reads that I pick up this month, like a project read for the month, because one of my goals is to finish the Game of Thrones series as it's written. We won't talk about the last book. And then I have a sci-fi on my TBR as well this month. Speaking of, I've kind of been in this like rereading mood. So along with that, I'm kind of wanting to pick up a lot of dead series, like series I kind of killed and stopped reading. And that would be Leviathan Wakes, the Expanse series. So I read Leviathan Wakes back in 2020, and I didn't have any money to spend on books. And I wasn't a Libby girl yet. So I didn't read the second book, which is Caliban's War, but I did go to used bookstore yesterday, and I did find Caliban's War, which is book number 2, and I found Abaddon's Gate, which is book number 3. So this month, I am going to read Caliban's War. I'm going to continue the series. This one is even bigger than Leviathan Wakes, but the margins are pretty large. To me at least, maybe not on camera, it doesn't seem like it, but I feel like I have to keep some of my like most beloved genres in my TBR because I don't want to get burned out of one genre. The genre for October, like the pattern for October, is out of my normal comfort zone anyways, so I feel like I need to keep some of the things that I know that I love or I'm more inclined to love in my TBR to keep me motivated to reading or taste testing these other things for October. So this is Editing Jessica here. I'm editing this in October, and I forgot to put that House of Leaves is also on my TBR. I've actually already started it, so I wanted to throw that in there. House of Leaves. No words necessary for House of Leaves, I think. It's like a mixed media book told in the text of a book as well as footnotes. It's a horror suspense, I believe. And it's a chonker. It reads like a textbook. It reads like an essay. So that one definitely should be mentioned because if you come back around at the end of the month, hopefully I will have read that unicorn in the book community. So, yeah, okay, bye. Enjoy the rest of the video. So, that is how my TBR currently stands for this coming month. If you have read any of these books, if you have any thoughts on any of these books, please leave it below in the comments. If you have any recommendations of similar books or something that I've said in this video reminds you of another book, please leave it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.